The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy October. I hope everybody is having a great start to their month. All right, we're going to get started on time as usual and hopefully get out of here on time. Today we're going to be talking about bank reconciliations and the differences between using QuickBooks Online, Advanced, although it's QuickBooks Online, just normal because I'm going to be showing you guys some sample data, so I have to be in one of the sample files. Then with QuickBooks Enterprise Desktop, some of the things that are key there, and then of course with Acumatica, the differences in there. So just as we start off with each one of these sessions, a reminder about who Fourlane is and what makes us special. So we have been the #1 QuickBooks solution provider since 2010, so we are going strong for 10 years here. We are QuickBooks and ERP experts. It's very rare to find people in an organization that represent and implement both products, right? So it's not just that we have departments internally, it is that we have staff members internally that represent both Acumatica and QuickBooks products. We have experts in accounting and systems, also something we figured out that's unique. I know I mention this all the time, but we do interviews for people in the ERP space that do implementation for ERP, and they frequently cannot explain what a balance sheet is, and so we are not going to be those people. And then we are project managers for change management, so we help you as you go through changes in your organization, anything major. Okay. Moving along, just to remind everybody also of the services we offer. So here at Fourlane, we're focused on data that allows you to make decisions in your company. And then, sorry, I just looked out my window and we have water spilling out of a spigot really largely. So I'm going to text my husband real quick. Couldn't have happened 10 minutes ago, right? All right, thank goodness we're at home, working from home right now. So process documentation and training, that is a big part of what we focus on, right? Creating processes, once those processes, we can figure out the logic of those processes, hopefully we can get to some automation, database review and repair, ERP readiness. So am I ready to go into that new system? Obviously product conversion and some other services here. Okay, so let's go in product. That's where I like to be in my webinar. So we're going to start off actually in QuickBooks Online first. So I'm not going to focus necessarily on how to do bank recs, because that's pretty straightforward regardless of the product you're in. I'm just going to focus in on what are things that make this product unique versus other products, right? So we can kind of get a good understanding. So QuickBooks, as everybody is, or not everybody, but I'm sure as people are well aware of, QuickBooks has a lot of banks. They have a specialized API for banks, and a lot of banks out there have connectors written into QuickBooks, whether it's a direct connection where the bank will sync in automatically information, or if it is a like QBO or QBX import, so that we can, maybe it's OX, so that we can bring in those banking transactions or credit card type transactions. So they have an API already written for that a lot of banks connect to. So that's something that's very unique in this space, right, is having all these banking institutions want to connect to your product. That doesn't happen in every single software. So that's something that QuickBooks really does incredibly well. So when you come in here, right, and you look at your banking information, it's going to tell you here's your bank balance. And since QBO has REST API, right, it could be up-to-date balances in here. So here's your bank balance, or it could also tell you when you last did a sync. And then it says here's your QuickBooks balance, and here's how many transactions you need to review. Okay, so here's my checking account, my savings account, my MasterCard account. Then down below here, I have all of the ones that I need to review. So it syncs across the transactions. I think that the expectation is most of the time, or a lot of the time, especially when we're talking about syncing like MasterCard or something like that, the expectation is that the transaction may not exist in the file. Okay, so they have these things called rules. And with the rules in here, this is something that makes QuickBooks unique. You can give a name to the rule in QuickBooks Online. You can say if it's money in, money out, for which accounts, right? Which accounts is this rule going to apply to? So you can limit which accounts the rule applies to. That's something that is unique here. Include all or any of the following, and then you can do based on description, bank text, or amount, right? Set up a rule based off of that. Then you can say, then assign to an expense, a transfer, a check. So that's also pretty unique in here. You can have categories, right? So which category is it assigned to, which is your accounts, which account is it assigned to. But you can add a split in here, which is unique to QuickBooks Online. So I can split it based on percentage or amount, okay? And then put it into different categories. So as an example, if we have a car payment or if we have a fixed asset payment, and we need to have some of it go to the fixed asset, and then, or I'm sorry, some of it go to the loan, and then some of it go to interest, right? We can have that set up in here, okay? And we can add additional split details if we need to. Also, if it's something like you have, I don't know, multiple, or you pay for rent and you're paying for CAM charges or something like that, right? So you can set it up and split those things up ahead of time. And then who's the payee? And then you can assign more information down here by putting in a memo. So this rule setup is what makes QuickBooks Online unique to other products out there. And then, of course, in the banking section here, being able to do the categorization right in here is not something that makes it unique per se, but it is convenient, okay? One of the things QuickBooks Online does as well is that if it has been categorized or matched through the banking transactions here, right? When you go to reconcile the transaction, these transactions will already be checked off for you when you go in to do the reconciliation at the end of the month. All right, so that's QuickBooks Online. In QuickBooks Desktop, oops, I already have all the screens up. QuickBooks Desktop, they've changed. There's several different ways that you can do reconciliation of and integration with the banks. So this is the newest way, is what we're going to be focusing on today. But if you go into preferences and go to checking, then you can see, right, we're talking about advanced mode today. There's also express mode, and then there's classic register mode. So there's 3 different versions of how people like to handle their bank feeds in here. So we're going to be talking about advanced mode today. It has a very QuickBooks Online-ish feel. Also, just like with QuickBooks Online, right, most banking institutions want to have you have an ease of use with their banking institutions, so they have connections built into your QuickBooks product. So I can see here, right, here's the account ending in, here's the last time I was in QuickBooks, Now QuickBooks Desktop, currently, you have to run the sync manually and log into the bank account that you are syncing information across into. Okay, so it gives me how many transactions I have pending to review here, how many it auto recognizes, similar to what we have in QuickBooks Online. Partially recognizes, unrecognized. The rules in here are also following what QuickBooks Online does. So money in, money out, when a transaction meets any or all of these conditions based on description, amount, memo. Then we can add the line if there's more, right? Description is this and that. And then we can rename to this payee, categorize to this account. Funny that they use categorize here into the account versus category, right, in QuickBooks Online. But I like that they are starting to implement a cross-platform naming information, and then also classify it into this certain class. Okay, so that's a big deal too, based on department. There isn't a split here, right? There isn't a split information here. There's also not a limit based on bank account here. So that's something you set up. That's something that is different than in QuickBooks Online. Okay. When you mark things as synced from the bank, right, in QuickBooks Desktop, it will put so when you're in process to go banking and reconcile, and I'm reconciling my checking account, I'm just going to put in here 0, and I select all these items. When I go look at the register for this account or a quick report for this account to see what is unreconciled, these will show up. Anything that is checked off mid-process on reconciliation is going to show up with a little asterisk in the cleared column. Anything that has been synced to the bank but has not been reconciled yet is going to show up with a little lightning bolt in the cleared column when you're looking at a transaction detail report. If I pull up a custom transaction detail report for all time for that particular banking account, right, the checking account, I can add in the cleared column, CLR, not CLER. And then also if I filter for cleared on this side, it's CLEAR, to know. So you can see here, right, a little lightning bolt, it means that, hey, this check has been synced from the bank. And then if we get down below here, we see some of the asterisks. That means it's been checked off in the reconciliation. The lightning bolt syncing from the bank does not automatically check it in the reconciliation. So you can use reports to say, oh, this one has cleared, and I can check them off manually, but it doesn't do it automatically currently. Okay, so that's also a difference in desktop. Okay, going into Acumatica, which is where I wanted to spend. There's more, right? So I need to spend a little bit more time in here. There's just going to be more options. Now, when you get into the ERP space, the banks, not all banks, have a connection into the software, right? So it's not something that is set up in that way. So when we sync information across into Acumatica, it's going to be an import. Okay, so similar to how QuickBooks did a while back when they just had those QBOX files imported. But so if you can get to an Excel spreadsheet of your information from the bank, then you can import it into Acumatica just the same as you can import it into QuickBooks, okay? But it's not a direct connection. In the banking area down here, so you can see some of the options that happen in the banking section. So we have banking transactions, we have fund transfers, we have reconciliation statements, which we're going to talk about in a minute. We have different profiles, so here are different lists, right? Which ones are our cash accounts and which ones are our corporate credit card accounts. But we're going to talk about processes here. So importing new bank transactions. So when we come in here, we have our different accounts set up. And when I go into the accounts, it has, right, which account number. It'll create a reference number for me for when I'm importing. What's the start balance date, end balance date for when we're importing, beginning balance, and then it will calculate the calculated balance down here and make sure that it matches. So we can add columns to this, right, based off of what information you pull down from your bank account, right? And just because it comes out of the bank account doesn't necessarily mean that it gets imported into here, but you can see what we have for different columns, right? So we have, I don't care about these ones over here, but the transaction date, transaction description, these are things that come out of QuickBooks. Same thing. We have two different columns, one for receipt and one for disbursement. Oftentimes when we download information from banks, these are in two separate columns, and when we're importing them to QuickBooks, we have to do some work to get them into one column if we're not using the bank direct connection. The credit card number, invoice number, and they do have rules in here as well. So importing bank transactions, right? We should be able to set this up as a one-time thing. You can drop it into Excel to get the proper headers, and then you can import records in on a consistent basis. Okay. Once we've imported the transactions, then we want to come into process bank transactions. So this is kind of what we have in a similar realm to what QuickBooks has as far as what transactions have come in, which ones have we imported, right? And are they matching to things that exist already? So here is a disbursement to American Insurance, and it ties out to a bill right, that we have in the system already, or a bill payment that we have in the system already, and we can match these transactions together, okay? So it is a right, it picks it up, the system picks it up and says, hey, these two things probably are matched based on our match setting. So we get to define when it decide, when's the system, right? We get to tell the system the logic. When is it going to decide if this is a match or not? So we can say days before the bank transaction date versus days after. This has been a problem historically with some of my clients in QuickBooks, because they'll say, like, I have 7 transactions on the same day for $50. How does it know? Or within the same week, or once a day for $50. How does it know which one goes to which one? So we can have some more guidelines in the ERP product around that. So receipt matching, disbursement matching, days before, day after, days before discount date, right? All these different things. Skip voided transactions or not. Have the relevance threshold, right? And then any relevance calculations. So there's quite a bit of, you can get quite elaborate, right, with your different matching settings that you have in here. So whether or not they would match, okay? And that's just saying, hey, when it sees these things over here, right, the date, the amount, what will it pull up on this side as a suggested match? We also have the ability to create payments from here if we need to, okay? We can attach files, all these things. So if I come back in, I don't know if it's going to let me uncheck this. And say create, right? And so then I can create the payment in here. What is the entry type? What is the branch, the description, all of the different fields that we decide that we want to have. So this is kind of like our rules in QuickBooks: branch, description, quantity, price, amount, offset, cost code, if we're doing anything, project tasks. All of that can be set up in here, and then we can create rules so that if we see this in the future, right, it can automatically create the payment for us if we need to. Okay. So rules are here as well. All right, going into the reconciliation statement transactions. So this is when we go in to do our bank reconciliation or a credit card reconciliation. We do what's called a reconciliation statement transaction. So I'm going to pull up an existing one here that we have with the credit cards. In here, you can see I have a cash account, right? Which account am I reconciling, basically? So this is actually a credit card account. What is the currency? What's the reference number? It'll create a reference number for you, so you don't have to put that reference number in there, but it's just so that we can go back and search for it. Reconciliation date, any documents that we need to pull in, the beginning balance, reconciled receipts, disbursements, reconciled balance, statement balance, right? So this is what you would be putting in. This is what you want to tie to, and then it gives us the difference right down below here. Also gives us the count of receipts and disbursements over there as well. Down below, again, we can choose which columns we want to see. We don't have to see all of these different columns down here. Reconciled, cleared, clear date, which is a cool one. Cleared date, it's a cool one. We'll talk about that in a second. Disbursement, right? Module, what module it is in, transaction type, status of that transaction, right? Is it posted, is it on hold, etc.? Is it voided? That would be something that we have in there. So what do these things mean? So one thing that is really cool is that you can go in, so I have a lot of clients that try to do this in QuickBooks as well. They go in and they do cash reconciliation on a daily basis, right? So when we train to that in QuickBooks, we say go in and put in the statement balance in QuickBooks, which is not the true statement balance. It's just the ending balance for that particular day. So let's say October 7th, what's the ending balance? Mark off what is cleared as of that day. And then the next day, go in and put the next ending balance for the day. And then the next day, go in and put the next ending balance for the day, right? And just continuously clear all along. Now with that, somebody could go in and uncheck something as uncleared, right? So there's some opportunities for things to get misaligned if you have access, and they can mess up your bank reconciliation, so it's not nice and clean. However, in Acumatica, you can do something a little different. So they have 2 columns when it comes to a transaction that is hitting a cash or credit card type account. So you can do cleared, right? So I can go in and mark it as cleared on a daily basis. It also marks the clear date. What date did I mark this cleared? Right? That would be an amazing thing to add into QuickBooks. Then we have the reconcile column. So this is saying, okay, now I can go in at the end of the month when I'm closing out my actual statement and toggle for all cleared and just mass check them all off, right? It just picks up all the ones cleared, and then I can just be looking for anything outside of that. Okay, so pretty cool things with reconciliations there. In here too, you can create an adjustment similar to what you can do in QuickBooks. We can also drop this down into Excel if we need to. I've heard that, I know, right, in a lot of systems, outside systems, that the reconciliation process, a lot of people end up pulling it into Excel and doing it in Excel and then importing it back in, what is clear and what hasn't cleared. Okay. Also in here, just to note, you can have filter settings, right? So you can filter based off of something, one of the fields there. If you have a really long reconciliation and you need to narrow things down, that is also really nice. Something else to note about reconciliation statements is that up top, because it's considered a transaction in here, we can take notes on the reconciliation. We can tie activities to the reconciliation, so we can add in tasks for somebody to do, right? So I can say, hey, I don't know what this transaction is, so I'm giving you this task. Or you can add an event because we need to have a discussion on how much money Joe is spending on the credit card every month. So let's set up an event tied to this particular reconciliation. We can attach files to here, so we can scan in those documents and attach them right in. And then we can add business events, meaning events are actionable things that we need to do. So anyway, pretty cool stuff because it's considered a transaction, that you can have that in here. All right. Gosh, we're always running up against time. Let me just make sure I didn't, in my notes, I didn't skip anything. Okay, so going in to our reporting. So there are some different reports that come standard, right? Cash account summary, cash account details. So that's similar to running like a quick report in QuickBooks. But we have a reconciliation statement. Okay. So this is a report. In QuickBooks, when we run our reconciliation statements, right, we have the ability to go in and pull our previous reconciliation statements as PDFs, or you can run the report in there. I don't have any in the sample file. Back here into Acumatica, so I'm going to say, okay, which reconciliation statement am I running this for? I'm going to say for this account, and I'm going to put run it for a certain which statement, right? Am I wanting to pull up the reconciliation report for? I can also run this on that previous screen for reconciliation statements transaction. There was a reports button, so I could run it right from that screen as well. So I can come in here and just choose a particular statement and then run the report. Okay. So again, this is completely customizable in here, but what we're looking at is, which company did we reconcile? What's the reference number of the reconciliation statement? What's the date? Which account are we talking about? What was the last reconciliation date? Beginning balance, disbursements, receipts with the quantities, ending balance. I need to zoom in on this. Sorry, I'm going to zoom in to help people out. Anything that's unreconciled would be showing up in here. Of course, this is a summarized statement, the cash account balance, and then any difference. So look, has a very similar look and feel to what we're used to doing in QuickBooks. And then we can have some more detailed reports if we need to as well. All right. Let me see. I think that is going back into I'm just going to pull up this screen here because I know that there are, I know that we can go into cash flows. Everybody talk about that. What are my cash requirements? We could all talk about that. But it's cash requirements reports. But I want to see if there's any questions specific around this. Shirley did say that too bad it has a QuickBooks Online feel. I feel your pain. However, if you go in right to the checking in the preferences, you can go back to Express mode, which does not have a QuickBooks Online feel at all. And then also Classic mode, which is like back to 2009 mode. So that definitely doesn't, I don't even think QuickBooks Online was around back then hardly. So you can switch into different views if you don't like the advanced mode. It's all based on what your rules allow you to do, or even if you have rules, because back in the classic mode, there weren't rules at all. And it was just allowing things to come into the register a lot faster. Okay, let me see the other question. Okay, so yeah, something that was called out here is that so when you're syncing the information from the banks into QuickBooks, right, automatically, meaning like, you know, they have a direct connection from the banks, there have been a lot of problems historically around that, right, because there's a lot of factors in play. We've got something happening with Microsoft, possibly something happening with Internet Explorer or Chrome. We've got something happening with the bank itself. Banks actually do have multiple systems. I've learned this over the years because we worked with a lot of banks on their API into QuickBooks or their connector into QuickBooks. So banks, right, they have multiple different systems. One that runs their credit card. They have a different system that runs their commercial accounts, a different system that runs their individual accounts, another one that runs their savings account, right? So there's all these different systems, so something can happen in one of those systems. Like there was a time at one point where Amex, when they sent things across into QuickBooks, it duplicated every single one. And people were just like screaming. We'd see it all over the blogs and all these things, right? So the thing is that when data is sent across from an outside system, a lot of people tend to try to look at QuickBooks and say, hey, QuickBooks, why are you doing this? But it has nothing to do with QuickBooks unless it's every bank account, right? Every single bank account and credit card account, then maybe that's a QuickBooks issue. Most of the time it's because the bank, something in the bank system that is sending the data across incorrectly, because they're the ones who maintain the talking to QuickBooks. So anyway, there is a mention here about experiences from downloading from banks. So a lot of times the banks get it rectified really quickly, but there are some times when we've had to go in and do some like mass cleanup, mass deleting of duplicate items that got automatically posted based on rules. So we have seen that before. Yeah. All right. I don't think I see any more questions in here. I hope you guys got to learn a little bit, right? It's different when you leave the QuickBooks space. You do have to do a couple of extra steps potentially with the importing of transactions. However, you have a lot of capabilities, additional capabilities when you go into ERP. So something to keep in mind. All right. Thanks, guys, for your time today. I appreciate it. And let us know if you guys have any further questions about QuickBooks or Acumatica. Take care.